my dad comes to me and he says, Graham, it's time for you to learn how to buy condoms. So I'm sending you down to the drugstore to get some. The only problem with this, I was 9 years old. So obviously the condoms weren't for me. Being 9, the closest thing I had to genuinely sexual feelings would have been towards April O'Neil, the foxy redheaded reporter who hung out with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They were for my dad. And sending me out to get them for him really served two functions. One, he was divorced and dating, and so he needed condoms. Two, he felt that I was getting older, and soon I would be dating girls and having sex, and so I should feel comfortable going out and buying condoms, so I didn't do anything unsafe. A lot of guys your age feel embarrassed buying condoms, my dad said, and I don't want you to feel that way. When I was a kid, my parents told me that sex was evil, that I was going to go to hell for masturbating, the whole 9 yards. One time, your grandmother locked me in a closet for 6 hours because she caught me playing with myself. But there's nothing wrong with having sex. All I want is for you to be responsible in your sex life. To which I reasonably replied, can I please go watch X-Men cartoons? And brief side note, but the X-Men cartoon show from when we were kids remains totally awesome and really holds up as a great piece of television. The Cyclops, Wolverine, Jean Grey love triangle in particular is handled in a much more interesting way than the movie series. It's on Netflix now, and you guys, seriously, check that shit out. Okay. So, there were lessons to be learned, and so on Saturday mornings, my dad would hand me 2 crisp $20 bills and send me to the Walgreens down the street to buy him a pack of lambskins. Upsettingly, I know that my dad only ever used lambskin condoms. They're thinner, he pointed out helpfully, though ironically it turns out they don't protect against most STDs, so in hindsight there may have been some holes, microscopic ones literally and figuratively, in his plan. Now, I still remember the first time I went into the store, stealthily sneaking through the aisles looking for the condom rack. It was helpful in that moment, as in many others in my life, to just simply pretend that I was Wolverine. Wolverine has an adamantium skeleton, so his bones are unbreakable, but more importantly, he has his healing factor. Whatever happens, whatever slings and arrows we might face in our day, and for me it was the loud teenagers standing next to me in the condom aisle, pointing at me and laughing and making jokes because what the fuck was this fucking little faggot retard going to do with a pack of condoms? While for Wolverine it was the time that Magneto used his magnetic powers to rip out Wolverine's metal skeleton. The key to both experiences, though, I think, would be the healing factor. Grit your teeth, bear it, heal. So I shrug it off, I grab my 36-pack of lambskins, and I go to the front counter. So obviously on the way, I grab a bag of fun-sized Snickers. And look, straight up, if any of you think that when you were that age, and your dad sent you out to buy condoms for him, that you could have resisted also grabbing a bag of fun-sized Snickers, I call bullshit. The lady behind the front counter, when I stepped up to it, my head poking above the little rack of gum, was in her mid-30s, black, long nails tapping, hair done up tightly. I'd like you to imagine her thoughts as a 9-year-old boy hands her a 36-pack of lambskin condoms and a bag of fun-sized Snickers. I have tried to imagine this many times, and honestly I can't say, because she just stared. And I think my heart probably stopped beating for a minute. The lady stares down at me with her big eyes, stretching a small moment between us, before she said quietly, determinedly, as if it was both inevitable and yet revelatory, that'll be $34.48. I hand her the 2 20s, sweaty and crumpled from being in the pocket of my navy blue sweatpants. She made change. I walked the 2 blocks back to my dad's apartment. I proudly present him with his lambskins, and I believe I was eating a little mini Snickers as I did this. So, look, he was proud, of course, but the feeling didn't last long. There was a slight wrinkle in this whole scheme. I was not about to have sex with anyone anytime soon, and so my condom buying ability was sadly underutilized. And I think my dad thought, as I went to middle school and then to high school, that any day now I would start to have sex, but much to his chagrin, that kept not quite happening. So it turned out that despite my dad's best efforts in high school, I was sort of, and I'm going to search for the word for this, massively and tremendously fucking uncool. But the detail would not deter him. By the time I was 15, he decided the problem was, and maybe you guys can begin to see a theme forming here, that I just didn't have enough condoms. So one day, he comes into my bathroom, in the much larger 2-bedroom he moved into by that time. He pulls open the top drawer under the sink, and it is quite literally filled with condoms. There must have been hundreds. Every brand, every kind, every size. Lubricated and unlubricated, ribbed for her pleasure and unribbed, presumably not for her pleasure. Red, blue, green, yellow, flavored, glow in the dark, and, of course, lambskins. Graham, he tells me, I'm going to keep this drawer full of condoms at all times. Oh, please, God, no. I respond, he tells me, soon, son, you're going to start dating. You're going to start having sex with girls. I was not. And I want to make sure that you always have condoms available to you. So I'll come in, and I will check on this drawer every few weeks. And if the condom supply starts to go down, I will refill them, no questions asked. Okay, so when you are a 15-year-old boy, as many of you here no doubt know, you are under a lot of pressure to have sex. Your body demands it. Your friends all appear to be doing it. Every TV show you watch shows people your own age frolicking in it, reveling in it, and yet you are constantly foiled by your own inability to join in. The pressure is maddening, and it's not helped, not even a little bit, by uncovering a stack of 300 assorted condoms every time you are looking for the toothpaste. So I catch him poking around in my condom drawer, and he'd be in my bathroom on some ostensible errand. I'd quickly pull open the drawer, and his face would fall. All the condoms were still there. My failure to have sex was disappointing enough for me, and now I could see it was killing my dad. So I did the only sensible thing. I went to my big sister. Now, Andrea was a few years older, and she was most certainly having sex. Lots of sex. Lots of sex with lots of guys, and I would really rather not get into this with any more detail or picture this right now. Thank you, because she is my big sister. Needless to say, her high school social life was just a little more exciting than mine. So I told her about the drawer, and I asked for a favor. Can you start taking condoms from my drawer so Dad will think I'm cool? And because she loved me, she said yes. I mean, actually, I think it was because her boyfriend at the time was totally broke, and this was a way to get free condoms. But in my retelling of the story, tonight, we're going to pretend that it is because she loved me. So the condoms started disappearing. Torn wrappers began to pop up in my garbage can. Nothing was ever said, but insinuations were made. Suggestions were planted. My father was thrilled. I was having all sorts of promiscuous sex with very attractive and cool teenage girls. I was doing it safely, too. I was my father's son, in his head. Now, to this day, I cannot throw a baseball. I honestly have no idea what a fourth down is, or why people seem to think they're very important. My dad never taught me those things, but he taught me about condoms. And so now, years later, whenever I finally started dating girls and having sex, and I know this is hard to believe, but at some point this did actually happen. I never got anyone pregnant, and I never got an STD, and there's exactly one person who I have to thank for that. My dad.